Hello, my name is Todd Miranda, and the purpose of this presentation is to demonstrate how to deploy a standard WPF Windows application using Click Once deployment and Visual Studio 2005. Let's begin by creating a new WPF Windows application project, and we'll call this Standard Click Once. And we'll create a simple application for this demonstration. We'll use a stack panel because it's a very easy panel to use for a demonstration like this. And we'll start by creating a slider. We'll give that slider a name, and we'll specify that name is Image Slider. We'll put a minimum of 100 on the slider and a maximum of, we'll say 500. And we'll specify a width so that it doesn't automatically stretch to the full size of the stack panel, and we'll just set that to 300. And then we're going to add an image, and we'll specify a source, a width, a height, and then we'll just simply say that we want to align that to the center. Now, in order to specify that source, let's go ahead and add an image to our project. So we're going to add an existing item. We'll go to our desktop, and in celebration of our latest family edition, we'll pick a picture of a new family member that I have. We'll specify the source to be that bigsys.jpg file. Now, for its width and height, we want it to be controlled by the slider, so we're going to use some data binding here, and we're going to use a binding expression, and we're going to simply say that we want to bind to the element that is image slider, and we want to specify the path to be its value. And we're actually going to do the same thing for the height. So we'll use a width and height that's proportional. Alright, let's build the solution, check for any errors, and let's run the solution just to see what this is going to look like running from our local machine. Okay, so here's our application. And you can see that we can control the image size using the slider. Alright, so we've built our first application, and now we want to deploy the application for other folks to be able to install. So one of the nice things that Visual Studio gives us is the Publish Wizard. The Publish Wizard can be accessed through the Build menu, and we can publish our project by just selecting Publish in the project name. But first, before we do that, I'd like to take a look at some of the options that are available to us when we do the Publish Wizard. So let's go into our project properties, and let's take a look at two different tabs here in the project properties. We'll obviously want to look at the Publish tab because this is going to have options for the Publish Wizard and how the publish files are going to be created and with what options. The other tab we need to look at is the Signing tab. Now, when you deploy an application using Click Once deployment, you have to sign the application and the deployment manifest files. So those can be signed using a certificate from your Windows Store. They can be signed using a file, or they can create a test certificate. Now, by default, if you don't specify a certificate, when you use the Publish Wizard, one will be created for you. A test certificate will be created for you. So we'll say that we want to sign the Click Once manifests, and if we select from a store, you'll be able to see that we get the items out of our Windows Store, and you can select a certificate from here in our Windows Store. We can also select the file. Now, the thing to notice about this is that the select file only supports PFX files. So if you have a certificate that is a different type of certificate besides a PFX file, you need to put certificate into your Windows Store and then use select from store. Or we can create a test certificate and we'll create a password. And there's our certificate created for us. Now let's go again to the Publish tab and Publishing Location. So this is the location to which all of the files are going to be published that will then be used for the Click Once deployment. The installation URL can be a different location, and this is the location of where you're going to install it from. And we're not going to set these right now because I want to show you how they're set through the wizard. Install mode and settings. We can set whether the application is available online only, which means that the user has to be connected in order to run the application, or we can specify whether the application is available offline as well. And that simply means that the user can launch that from their start menu, and they can do that whether they're connected to the location of the original files or not. We also see publish version here. Starts with 1000. We can set this to automatically increment each time we publish, and this is how that we would do updates. We can specify the application files that are part of this deployment, any prerequisites for this deployment, how we are going to handle updates, because the updates can come from a different location than the installation location or installation URL, and options. Now, options allow us to set some things that will affect two things. Number one, the published web page, which is where the user will go to install the application. Also, the product name will not only show up on that web page that the user is going to use to install the application, but this will also be the start program name that will show up in the start programs list when they install the application. So let's give this a name, and we'll call this My Product. Publisher name will be Todd Co. Support URL could be whatever we would want this to be. If we had a support site for our application, I'll just simply use a site that I know about. And then the deployment web page, and this would normally be publish.htm. You could call it whatever you want to call it. If you don't specify anything here, it'll default to publish.htm, but you can change that deployment web page. Obviously, open deployment web page after publish makes sense. Once we publish, we're going to open that deployment web page so we can look at it. The block activation from application from being activated via URL. Once you install the application through, say, the website that you go to install the Click Once application, it's going to start the application for you. You can check here to not have the application start automatically. There may be a reason for security that you would want to do that. So you can rename all the application files to the .deploy file extension if you wanted to. We can allow URL parameters to be passed to the Click Once application. If you do a CD installation, which we can install to a CD, this sets it to automatically start setup when the CD is inserted. So this is kind of an auto start setup. And then if you're uploading the files directly to a web server through the Publish wizard, you can have Studio verify those files after they're actually uploaded to the web server. Alright, that's good enough for now. So we've made those changes to the Publish wizard. Now we're going to save those changes, and we'll go ahead and do a publish. So let's publish our project, specify the location. So we're going to go out to our drive because we want to actually have it deploy the files to a folder on our drive, and we'll call this test deploy in the test deploy folder. Alright, and click next. Now that was where the files are going to be generated when we do our Publish wizard. This is how the users will install the application. Is it from a file share? Is it from a website or from a CD-ROM or DVD-ROM? We'll choose website. And we'll choose that the location of the website that we're going to install from is test app, and we'll choose next. So once again, this is the website that the application will be installed from. Yes, this application is available online or offline. Notice we could have set all these through our project properties. And yes, we do want it to be available there. And we click finish. And now we'll watch the progress. Great. So now the publish process was successful. So let's take a look at the files that are created for us. We have an application manifest file here. We have an application manifest file here. Notice it has the version number embedded into the file name. We have our publish.html file. This is our deployment web page file. And we have our setup project. And then we have our application and our application manifest file. So these are the files that will get created for you when you do your Publish Wizard. Now we're going to take these files and we're going to deploy those to the web server. Alright, so with the wave of a magic hand there, we're going to deploy those out to a web server. And we're going to go out to that web server and let's take a look at what this looks like. Alright, so here we are. I've gone to the location that I said I was going to use as the installation location, and here's our deployment file. And you see that the company name shows up here, or the publisher name shows up here, the product name that we specified, and here's the product name, the version, and the publisher information again. Here's our support site. If you had not included the support site URL, this link would not be here. You would simply have the Click Once and .NET Framework Resources link. And when we're ready, we'll click Install. Now, we'll get a Verifying Requirements box that pops up. And the one thing that we're going to get that you don't want to happen normally is this security warning. And this is because my certificate, being a test certificate, cannot be verified. So it's indicating here that publisher cannot be verified. Are you sure you want to install the application? If you use a valid certificate that's registered with one of the many certificate registration authorities, then you'll get a verified publisher, and it'll indicate that the publisher is verified. So we'll go ahead and install because we trust ourselves most of the time anyway. Alright. So the application just installed, and since we did not click the block application from starting up from the URL, it started the application automatically, and now the application is running as an installed application, and you can see that it works just as before. So let's minimize this and let's take a look at our program groups, and you'll see that we now have a Start Menu Programs group with my application, so I can run my application, and a link to the support site. So if I double click this, it's going out to the update server, which is the same as the install server, making sure there's no updates, and then runs the application. So now what would happen if we updated the application? Well, let's take a look at that real quickly. Let's go to our window1.xaml, and we're simply going to add a text block in here, and we're going to specify maybe that this is horizontally aligned to the center, and we're going to say this is a new version. Alright, and we'll save that. So now we're not going to make any changes to any of the publishing features. We're simply going to publish again, and we want to use all the same locations. Yes, all that's still correct. And finish. So we get our Publish Wizard that runs. It's going to replace the files that are out in our publish directory where we publish the files. So let's take a look at those files now, and you'll notice one thing different. You'll notice that we still have our 1.0.0.0 and our 1.00 files, but we now have a new set of version files that are there, which reference that new version that we just created. And we had the checkbox checked that said update the version number with each publish, so it updated our version number for us. So now we're going to move these new files out to our web server, and we'll see what happens the next time we run the application. Alright, so again, with a little hand waving and some magic, we've FTP'd these new files out to our web server, and we could go back to the web page, and if we refresh our web page, you'll notice that now we get our updated version number, and we could click here to install our updated version number, but we don't want to do it that way. We want to take a look at the capabilities of the application itself to go and check for updates. So now if we double click on our application this time, it's going to go out to the server, and it's going to say there's an application update available. Do you want to download it now? We'll do OK. It'll go through our install process again. It won't give us another security warning because we've already accepted the application. And now we get our updated application with our new text block so that we can change our image. So that is how we can use the Publish Wizard in Visual Studio 2005 and Click Once deployment to deploy our application, to handle updates in our application, and to set many of the properties that are available to us in our Click Once deployment.